vitriol. I don't know what you're expecting, sir. This is a respectable movie podcast. On the last episode of the show, we said jizz more times than we said anything else.
Is that because of what Confessed Flesh was like?
Oh, no, I guess it wouldn't have been the last episode. It was the episode before that when we were talking about toy soldiers. Lots of jizz talk.
What is Toy Soldiers like way from the 80s? Or what am I thinking?
Like the 90s, yeah, with Sean Astin. Yep. Yeah, but
I'm thinking about Taps. Have you seen Taps?
Nope.
I want to go back and Taps. Can we do an episode about Taps?
What's Taps? What is that?
What's Taps?
I've never seen it.
Taps technically it might not be Tom Cruise's first movie, but it's essentially Tom Cruise's first. It's the first movie where people are like, but who is that guy?
Oh,
and it's like, oh yeah, he's some guy called Tom Cruise. Okay, that guy's amazing. Now that's within a movie starring Sean Penn and Timothy Hutton, I think. It's amazing. Let's watch Taps. I want to watch Taps. I want to do a podcast.
It feels like you're trying to do everything in your power to not talk about this movie.
Oh.
This episode of the Kulturecast, it's Halloween. It's Horrortober, folks. We've been doing this for 8 years. And by we, I mean I. This is 8 years now of podcasting, of whatever that means. Congratulations to me. I don't know. Like there's no one to congratulate. It's like a party for one. I'm going to go have dinner by myself. You know what I mean? It's been 8 years.
You could do worse than having dinner by yourself.
That's true. That's true. I could be having dinner with literally most people.
Wait a second. But when did this podcast start?
October of 2014.
Was it October 4th? Was it?
It would have been close. I would have to go and look, but I would have to go and look at the conversation that I had with my original co-host, because he was like, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And that was it. So I've never looked at the actual date. Like whenever I look, I always just go and look at the just what the first episode is. What the first episode of the show is.
Because our first episode was October 4 years ago, and it was Lost Souls.
Oh man,
it was 2018
when I sent you an invite, and I was like, "Richard, just show up."
And that's how it's gone. Susan's like, I don't understand. So what's happening? Why are you so upset? I'm like, you don't understand. Chris, suddenly there's an invitation in my calendar. And it just says,
you can say no.
The title of a movie. And I have no choice. I just have to go.
That's not true.
And Chris says, basically the deal is, here's the movie. Here's the time. Be ready to discuss. And I'm like, Professor Stash has given me this is the midterm. This is the final. And so I know what my homework is. And I might have 1 week to do it. I might have 6 weeks to do it. But I know my homework, and then I got to go do it. And I do it. I
sent you an email for all the movies for next year, and you never responded. I gave you the opportunity to pick things.
We can talk about that.
So this is an affront. Oh. This is an affront. Rich, the truth comes out. Look, Richard's mad.
Look, and our buddy, Mr. Mike White, sent me a list. And I went through the entire year. Most of everything had already been chosen. So then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to take the very first opening available. I believe there may have been like something around Christmas, but I basically just went, what's in January? Okay, done. I'll do it. And I looked up the movie and I'm like, that sounds interesting. So I'm doing it. Yours was even harder. I'm like, what are these movies? You got to let me talk about something. So why? we got to do.
Wait, why? If you've never seen a movie, isn't that more exciting to talk about it than if you have?
But I mean, some of it, like,
I guess it's up two minds, right?
The theme of the month, I don't know. I kept running into I don't know if it was Czechtember or.
That's a Mike's show. That's heady stuff. My show is like the dumber version of that.
Yours was like Portuguese July or something. I don't know. It was
Portuguese July, not Spanish language films, sir. Portuguese.
I'm not gonna want. No, I mean, I don't know. I had trouble.
I ain't watching none of them foreign flicks.
Before even wrapping my head around it, I'll get to it. But I'm making a special. We should do Taps. We just find a day and do
October 20th.
Taps. You want to do Taps on October?
No, October 20th is the day that I did the first episode of this show in 2014.
Oh, okay. Okay. October 20th, 2014. What was I? What was a young America?
America was young, man. I don't know, man. Like 2014 feels like a lifetime ago. And it's weird. Like I don't ever think about it around this time of year about how kind of important October is to me and like my career here with what I've been doing, because like, again, it's like a party for one, like, you know what I mean? It's hard when it's shouting into the void. So,
well, because you're not, dare I mention, because if I'm listening to another podcast, is that disloyal? Can I mention another podcast on this
Okay.
show? It's a good thing Mike White's not here because he would probably hate it if he heard I was listening to Blank Check.
I don't even know who that is.
Okay, good. Maybe it's not a problem. Anyway, but it's not you and somebody else. So it's like, it's easy when it's two people because then it's the constant dynamic. You've got like a lot of co-hosts, me and Father Malone and Cullen and, Mike and a million other people.
Yeah.
You have so many co-hosts that you bring on that it's, it's hard to keep track of. Like, it is just, scrape away all the co-hosts. It's just you. It's your party.
Boy, makes me feel good. You know what is also done in tandem? Playing the violin, especially in this movie. At the end of this movie.
By the way, it's the cello. So
I'm sorry. Well, there's always room for cello. God, on this episode of the Kulturecast, if you don't know who you've been listening to for the last 5 minutes, I am your host, Chris Stashute. This is Richard Hatem. He works on DC Titan. He wrote the Mothman prophecies.
Yeah, I did.
He's a cool... You know what's weird, Richard? I'm friends with you because of you. Not the other way around.
No, I came scraping at your door and I have not left. And I'm not going to.
I'm not complaining. But we might be complaining because on this episode of the Kulturecast, it is October. It's Horrortober. Horrortober 9 or 8, I guess. 8. The horrors of Netflix. And boy, aren't they horrible. Maybe not bad, but maybe scary. Who knows? On the first episode of Horrortober, we're going to be talking about 2018's Netflix exclusive, The Perfection.
What is happening to me? I'm burning out.
It's gonna be okay, Lizzie.
Oh, it's not. Oh, God, it's not. Listen to me. Something is wrong. Something is wrong with me.
Lizzie, I know. That's why we need to get you help.
I'm dying. I'm dying. What's happening? What's happening?
Oh, my God.
What's happening?
I don't know.
Oh, my God. What is it?
I don't know. What the fuck?
Looking alive. It's bugs. Help me. Help me, darling. Help me.
You know what you have to do?
You know what happens now.
The film is directed by Richard Shepard, though, come on, let's call him his real name. My nickname was in high school, Dick Shepard.
That's not your nickname. What would that even do? Why would people...
Come, my children. Dick Shepard. Dude, your reaction was worth it. The film is directed and written by Richard Shepard, and it stars Allison Williams, hot off of Get Out, which we'll talk about because I feel like it has a lot to do with this movie. Right? There you go. Now you realize one of the big things we're going to be talking about. Also stars Logan Browning, Steve Weber, and Elena Huffman, and it is all about Allison Williams, who plays a cello player who went to a school for talented cello players, but had to drop out when her mom got sick. And after her mom passes away, she comes back to the school ready to play anew, only to find that she's been replaced by the latest student in search of the titular perfection. I'm probably making the movie sound a lot better than it is because I know, Richard, from what you texted me, we're probably going to be having an interesting conversation here, but I want to ask you first, before I tell you what I thought, what did you think of The Perfection? Because I know you'd never seen it.
Okay, so let me preface this really quick. I think in terms of the cast, I love the cast. Allison Williams, and I'm sorry, I should have it in front of me, but since I don't have everyone's names in front of me, let me just say that I really, really love the performance of Steven Weber. Literally everyone that I saw featured in this movie, I thought is an actor that I like, and I've seen things that I like, and so this is not about when I say I didn't like this movie, and I tensely disliked this movie. It is not because of, it was poorly made or poorly acted. I disliked it for what it is and for what I think it was trying to tell itself it was. I found the experience of watching it profoundly unpleasant, simply as a viewer. So if I'd known nothing else about it and I knew nothing else about it, and I sat down to watch it with an open mind, as I do with all the movies you assign me, Professor, and I found myself wishing I did not have to watch anymore. And not want to be very clear, not in a good way, not in the way that Clockwork Orange is too uncomfortable, or The Devils, which we also watched.
That's true. That's true.
Makes you this was not this is making you uncomfortable. That's the key to it's great. And it's like, no, this is making, let me put it this way. Maybe this is the clearest distillation of what I feel about. This is, think of a movie that touts itself as anti-rape, that's all about rape and wants and presents rape to you, spends a lot too much time showing you the thing it supposedly is shaking its finger at, if I may. That's how I felt about this movie. Pretends to be about female empowerment against the patriarchy, when really my reaction to it was trading in the basest elements of cinema, and to a degree that became weirdly questionable. In other words, not since Todd Browning's Freaks have you had to sit back and go, now wait a second, I'm watching Freak. Am I part of the problem or part of the solution? Are the freaks the heroes? Are the freaks being exploited? And having said that, Todd Browning Freaks is 15 times the movie this is.
Google gobble, Google. We will make you one of us. One of us. We will make you one of us.
Yeah, we will.
I think for me, I didn't pick these films this month. Our good friend over at the Wake Up Heavy podcast, Mark Begley, he helped me program the month.
Okay.
Not passing any blame off. I'm just saying I don't watch a lot of Netflix horror movies because this is a thing.
Wait, hold on. By the way, I want to ask the theme Netflix horror movies.
Mm-hmm. Netflix horror movies.
Because now we got more to talk about, but please continue.
Right. Which, I mean, again, like that's one of the things to talk about with this movie. Like I said, also the Allison Williams thing is a thing worth talking about. My point being, like I said, not blaming anybody else, just pointing out there is a theme to this month. These movies were watched by somebody other than me. But the reason I mention this is because of what Mark Begley's idea behind the month was, to show Netflix horror movies that take a turn in the second or third act. I think we could both agree it kind of does, but I think the issue that I have with this movie is the similar issue that you have, which is for a movie about, again, trigger warning here, rape, it sure does revel in it a lot.
And we should probably be a bit clearer. It's actually not literally about rape. It actually,
but it is about, more or less about rape.
Ultimately, there are themes of oppression, and there are themes, yes, but crassly uses it as a plot device. It
literally does. There's no other way of explaining.
No, I've never seen sexual abuse used for nothing else than a plot twist. So it was so offensive to me, and then doubly offensive in that it thinks it's got its feminist cred.
It's got the gotcha moment.
Yeah,
it's really good that this movie is produced by Miramax too. I love watching movies and seeing the Miramax logo in 2022. Like
what? I'm like, wait a second, is Miramax still making movies? Dude, I don't even understand.
In front of the Confess Fletch is Miramax. What cachet does that have in the industry anymore?
Forget cachet. It's only they must have had some sort of they must have owned the property. Like with Fletch, they may have. I mean, that's an existing IP.
It's Paramount.
So they may have had a deal that kissed them in perpetuity to always be, because Miramax at one point owned a Fletch book. I mean, that stuff happens.
Right.
But this appears to be something written and directed by Richard Shepard, not really based on it, as far as I know.
No.
So how is it? I didn't even know that Miramax still existed as a banner. Does it?
It does. I don't know why. It shouldn't. It shouldn't.
It's ironic.
Again, for a movie about that, with a character playing the role in a lot of ways of what Harvey Weinstein was in reality, it's a little like, what are you guys like? Do you not understand that this is weird? Like, this looks weird. It's a weird message to be sending. But look, we're going to talk spoilers, but I think before spoilers, Richard, you would not. This is not a movie you would advise people.
No, I would actively and rarely do I do this. And by the way, I don't know any of the people involved in this. I'm a writer. I've written movies. I write for television. My desire here is not to go, oh, this person's an asshole, but to But if I can, to both represent my emotional reaction to something, which I think is legit, I think, like, I'm sorry, I think a person can have an emotion. The movie was made to elicit an emotional reaction one way or the other, and I had one. So here it is.
I think it's exploitative too.
I think it is. But I will also say, and this is a little more ephemeral, but I'm like, okay, Richard Shepard, I don't know Richard Shepard. So let me find out who Richard Shepard is, because he wrote and directed this. If I had such a strong reaction, let's find out what this guy's done. And I went through and I'm like, I don't know that, until I got to the Matador, which I do know. And I'm like, oh, that's so weird, because I kind of had a bad, not as bad, but I didn't have a great reaction. I remember thinking,
really?
Oh, I didn't like it. And I'd heard that it was good. I mean, I had only heard great things. So again, I'm not gunning for Richard Shepard. I don't know him. I would love to have lunch with Richard Shepard. But people were like, oh, Matador's great. And I wanted it. Pierce Brosnan I like. And so I thought I'd watch it. And I watched it and I'm like, wow, this is just not working for me. Something about this is just off. So this weirdly might be an aesthetic allergy. Like there may be a Richard Shepard style that is just not for me. So maybe that opts me out of whatever my opinion is. But since we're doing a podcast and I'm sitting here, I mean, the guy also directed an episode of 30 Rock. And I'm sure I love that episode. Let me just put that in.
Well,
I don't know what episode it was. I guarantee you I liked it because I loved it. So there you go.
I think what's funny is you mentioned The Matador. That is a movie that I remember liking at the time when it came out. That movie came out in 2005, so I would have been 15. I want to say weird. Yeah, it was 17 years ago now. So I don't know. I haven't seen it recently, so I don't want to comment because I remember liking it at the time. And I remember that scene where he's like sitting there knocking at his door. Do you remember that? Pierce Brosnan's not. It's like kind of the pivotal moment of the movie. I remember resonating with that, but like I said, I don't remember anything else. Before we talk spoilers, this movie, not my cup of tea. I know that there are people out there that this is totally their cup of tea, not mine. I didn't have as much of an aversion to it as you did, or a friend of the podcast and a podcaster on the network, Father Malone. He watched it and he had a pretty strong reaction to it as well. I disliked it, but I think I disliked it similar but different reasons than you. But yeah, it's not my cup of tea. So why did you dislike? Because the subject material, the way that they handle it's way too exploited. It's handled very poorly, even for a horror movie, a revenge thriller. Because it is a horror movie, but not really. It handles it in a way that someone, like you said, they feel like they're getting that gotcha. Like it's like a gotcha. And it's like, gotcha what? Like, gotcha what here? Like, what are you getting at?
Exactly. Because ultimately, okay, so let's talk about
what we're
through this. Okay, so
guys,
so the movie, I mean,
told in 3 parts essentially. There's the scene in China, the scene in Minneapolis, and the scene in New York. That's on top of everything else. One cheap movie made too. On top of everything else,
it starts out with a very comprehensible narrative about. Okay, so I think I know what we're getting into here. This is about artists. I mean, it's like, what was the movie Whiplash? This is about young people who have been trained to within an inch of their life to become extremely proficient at playing a musical instrument, in this case, a cello. And we're very quickly made to understand, I see. So there was a young woman, Allison Williams, who was the best. And because her mother got sick and she had to go take care of her mother, she sort of steered away from her virtuosity at the cello. And in her absence, another young woman came up and in the world of classical music and playing the cello became, it's like, oh, she's the
star. The world of movies, there's no room for 2 cellists. I mean, that's what it always feels like.
Yes. But again, we're only, and I will be, look, from a troper to another troper, this movie is only built on tropes.
Replete with them.
That's all it is. I mean, there is no story cake. There is only icing tropes in this movie. It's just
pretty much.
We're going to just take as many tropes as we can and arrange them in a particular way, hoping to surprise.
And it has those sparkler candles on it too. It has there is a level. I mean, there is a thing in this movie that they do twice. And it's like,
what is it?
The rewinding thing where
Oh
they
my God.
rewind
Oh
the
my
movie. Like,
God.
what is that other than a sparkler candle? You know what I mean? If you're using that metaphor, like that is just the lazy, I don't know, like lazy is not even the right word. It's like so gimmicky. It's a gimmick. It's like when Moe comes out in The Simpsons with the sundae on top of his head. It's a gimmick. Like, why are you doing this once, let alone twice?
Almost, yeah.
Once is okay. Twice is you're pushing it.
At a certain point, I felt like this feels like a movie written by an algorithm to teach robots how to hate. Or it's like
the dangers of humanity is taught through Allison Williams in The Perfection.
Like zero humanity. By the way, Steven Weber does all, and Allison Williams. They all do all they can. They all did their job. But man, why do this? And it's funny. It's funny because I just recently listened to a podcast where a group of people spent 3 hours talking about a movie called Star 80. Have you ever seen Star 80?
Mm-mm.
It was Bob Fosse's last.
Okay.
It was about the murder of Dorothy Stratton, who was a young woman who was a Playboy playmate, or maybe was in Hustler. But this was about the incel, played by Eric Roberts. It was made in 93, but basically about an incel who barnacles on to a young, beautiful woman, as people in Hollywood do, as Hugh Hefner did, and became obsessed with her. And then when he thought he was losing control of her, murdered. Not only is it a hideously ugly story, it is not a unique story, happens every fucking day. And the entire movie was told from the point of view of the incel. Dorothy Stratton, you see more of her breasts than you see of her agency in the movie. And it's a movie I've seen, and hearing them talk about it, I was like, yeah, this totally, you've nailed it. So now here we are watching The Perfection. You have to ask, well, what other than, wow, they pulled off some twists formally. Why make this movie? What am I supposed to get from this? Now, if what I'm supposed to get is I love these two women. I'm on their side. I support their fight against the patriarchy. If that's what I'm supposed to get, it failed.
I was saying, I don't get that at all.
It failed in form, function, and every other way.
I can't help but what were they going for by the end of the movie? Because by the end of the movie, all I can think is, they're sociopaths too, though. Like now.
So these two women, okay, again, I mean, for you poor listeners, to understand what the fuck we're talking about, the first portion of the movie, it feels like Allison Williams, it feels like she is jealous of this newcomer, and yet at the same time develops a sexual, possibly romantic relationship with this woman. And then, but then the first quote unquote twist is that it appears that she tries to drive this woman insane to doing an act of self-harm that will permanently end her career as a cellist, and she does. But then later we're asked to re-understand that act in a different way, right? Can you describe the rest of the movie from here?
Yeah. So the way the movie kind of sets itself up is it plays a scene or a section of scenes and then takes a moment at the end of that to rewind it to not just before that scene, but something that we may have even seen before. Now we're understanding what's going on. So like you mentioned at the beginning, they go on this trip in this bus. And I actually think that bus scene is rather good at creating some tension and creating like really terrible like situation you don't want to be in, which is sick in a foreign country on public transportation, unable to communicate with the people. Right. That's a
nightmare.
Right. Yeah. And like, I appreciated that scene in the movie outside of what it was going for with the, you're puking up maggots and you've got this bugs under your skin. Like none of that worked for me because it all felt really lazy.
Well, and
even though this movie's made in 2019, which is even more ironic.
Well, 2018, but let's pause for a second. Because for a second, it was like, oh, is this movie interesting now because of COVID? Because there's a lot of like, hey, we're in China and there's this weird disease virus going around that's making people sick and it's very communicable. And here, put on this mask. And I was sort of like, oh, okay. So this is like a weirdly prescient film. But of course, that's actually sort of not That doesn't play. And I'm not faulting for not.
No,
so
but
that's not my complaint.
But the woman, the Allison Williams and Logan Browning are on this bus together. Logan Browning starts getting sick, and Allison Williams starts telling her, like, we got to get off this bus. You're sick. We got to get off. They're going to kick us off. And so they get off the bus, and essentially Logan Browning sees bugs under her arms, and she cuts her hand off because Allison Williams hands her a cleaver. And you're like, what's going on? And so we get about a third of the way through the movie before it rewinds because Steven Weber kicks Logan Browning out of this school that he runs because she can no longer play her instrument. And so it kicks us back to that scene in China. And we find out after Logan Browning shows up with Allison Williams, we find out that Allison Williams intentionally caused Logan Browning to see bugs because she had psychoactive inducing meds.
She poisoned her so that she would have
hallucinations. So she's hallucinating bugs, and she convinces her that she got sick from the food, and then she also forces her to cut her own hand off. But she all did it with the altruistic intention of making her leave the school where she was being, and I don't say this lightly, gang raped constantly, apparently.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what fucking movie are we watching here? Because there's another twist that we have to talk about even still. And it's like, I don't even want to talk about what happened in this movie anymore. Like, it's so misguided as a form of storytelling. Like, you can't do this and get people to really get invested in anything.
Well, yeah, because then we're like, oh no.
But you're just dumb. You didn't get it. Like, you're dumb. You just don't have all the facts in front of you, and we're going to show you. It's like, what are you trying to insult us as the moviegoer? Because, like, am I supposed to care about Allison Williams? But she looks like the villain.
It's like a computer going, oh, but here is now information that changes the previous information. But there doesn't seem to be an emotional component to it other than, look what I did, audience. I fooled you. Whereas the audience is like, yeah, I know I'm watching a thriller. Why are you dancing around congratulating yourself that you're now showing me information you didn't show me?
Right. It didn't even hint at.
We're not participants. The movie is like, ha, you thought this person was the bad person, but now this other person turns out to be the bad person. Oh no, another person's the bad person. But at the end, I'm sort of like, well, okay, so then we get into a sequence where it appears that Allison Williams is now going to be re-victimized after trying to do not the most effective way of shutting down the trouble at the school. In fact, I would say it was a pretty ineffective and horrible way. But now she's the prisoner of the school again and is going to be victimized again until we realize, oh, wait, no, they're still in on it together, right?
Right. So, okay, yeah, you go through the motions of, you think Allison Williams is innocent, then she's the villain, and then you think then she's innocent, then she's the victim, and Logan Browning is the victim. Yeah, it's
the bad guy somehow. Now she's the bad guy. But it's all formal. When I say formal, I mean it's the form the movie is taking. There's no emotional content of this. Because we've never been emotionally allowed to invest in anyone because nobody has a real life. And nothing about the movie tries to represent real life. So we know we're watching tricks. We know we're going to be tricked. We know we're going to be tricked again. And very early on in this process, we're simply now sitting back. It's like watching M. Night Shyamalan's 90, where you're just sort of sitting back going, well, okay, I guess there's going to be something coming. So I guess I'll just wait for it and see if it's effective. And then that thing happens and you're like, oh, okay, so that was because it's just formal. In The Sixth Sense, it was emotional and it was real. And the movie, and the beautiful thing about The Sixth Sense is The Sixth Sense works even without the twist. You can remove the twist from The Sixth Sense. It's nice, it's interesting, but you can remove it and people still walk out going, that was a great. It's not great because of the twist. It's great because of the emotion and how those emotions play out among the characters. People weren't disliking The Sixth Sense until the last minute of the movie. They were fucking loving it, and then they loved it a little bit more. The problem is that every other movie after that was sort of like, well, we're watching and it's okay and it's vaguely interesting, but we're basically waiting for the twist. Now, this is a movie where from the first moment, you're just sitting there going, well, what the fuck? What are they trying to do? So you're never really in the movie, right?
I agree. Again, it's weird. There's this odd disconnect that I felt as an audience member with this movie, because again, like you've mentioned, I've seen movies like this that have similar twists that one character's been in on it the whole time and you didn't know it. That's one of the twists in The Departed, is one of the characters was in on it the whole time and you didn't know it. They showed that at the end of the movie. They didn't show it 2/3 of the way through in a rewinding of the footage. No, you just understood what that meant when the character came out as a mole. You could then recontextualize the movie on your own. I don't need the movie to do it for me. I don't need the movie to literally wind the movie back.
Yeah.
But the only reason it did that is because it withheld the information completely. And that's playing dirty fucking pool with making movies. That's what that feels like.
Yeah, and because the movie is
for
offering
the Friday
nothing,
night crowd, man.
Yeah,
is this not the equivalent?
Nothing else is being offered. So it's like, so we're literally just like, I feel like I'm in a notes watch movie. It's like, okay, so now you're telling me this, now you're telling me that. No point. Now, okay, now let me back off a little. Logan Browning, delight. As an actress, I love her. She was in a show I worked. She was in Secret Circle. And Allison Williams, I think, is fantastic. So these are people I like. When in the portion of the movie where it looked like there was a seduction going on between them, I enjoyed that. And there was a part of me that's like, I was like, and not for prurient reasons. I was sort of like, oh, I like these two. Okay, maybe it's not. Maybe I thought it was going to be about, it was going to be Amadeus. It was all about, hey, you're better than me, and I can't handle that, and it's all about artistic perfection. But what it's really going to turn into is, oh, they're both great musicians, so they're actually going to connect on that level. And maybe somehow that's what the movie's about. Maybe I was wrong. And I would have loved that movie.
Bet you would have. I would have too. I think that's the issue that I have with this movie is, for what the premise is, it never delivers, and it kind of like under delivers hard. This movie has a good idea at its core. Like you said, two rival musicians. Like that's an interesting idea. That you remember The Prestige, the movie with Chris Nolan movie, two rival magicians. Like, again, like I'm not saying it needs to be that heady and up its own ass, but I mean, again, that's a better movie than this one. Again, it's the same idea. It's the same, like, two artistic types going at it.
Yeah. And if if you really wanted us to be on the side, if you really wanted to make them look, okay, if you start at the notion of, what if there's a movie about a conservatory where the people running it are so evil, depraved, and yes, on the outside world they're creating artistic geniuses, but at what hideous, awful cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's make a movie about people within that system who fight back. Because what I want to do is make a movie that's saying something a bit more about how a male authoritarian system would actually treat the females in their control. Like, you can do that. That's great. Let's make that movie. This is not that movie. This movie mocks that notion, mocks the notion of a legitimate reaction to abuse, a legitimate reaction to a misogynist system. This was like, well, let's dress up in that and put it on our name tag, but really, let's leer at it. Let's show female nudity. Let's get you off on watching them suffer the anticipation of rape. Really? That's what you're going to do in 2018. Let's spend a long time watching women brutalize each other, and then let's anticipate a rape.
2018 was a different time, Richard.
Really?
No, not at all. You said you liked Allison Williams, and I liked Allison Williams in Get Out. And then she was cast in this movie. And it feels like she was cast in this movie because she was in Get Out. And it almost feels like they're trading on the cachet. No, I know, but I'm thinking more to this idea of casting her in a role where her allegiances are up in the air.
Right. Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah.
I mean, come on. She's literally playing a similar role in this movie that she's in Get Out. The conceit is the same. She's a character who looks one way and acts another.
And now we're going to talk about why not just make the movie about Miramax? Yeah.
Well, that's my point. I mean, I mean,
it's like,
again,
what the fuck, you know? It's like, okay, so a company, a group of people cast a person based on the fact that they played a similar role previously. Okay. Yeah, they would do that.
No, but it's more, I'm speaking more to, this is the exact same kind of role. It's like they're trading in the cachet of, this is what you expect her to be, a character with a weird hidden agenda. Yeah. And it's like the same thing. In this movie, it's the exact same thing in Get Out. But you know what the problem is? That movie is a good movie. It's done well. They play it until the last possible moment. The best thing about her in that movie is there is no shadow of a doubt as to her allegiances up until the moment that there is. Go rewatch Get Out. There's not a moment in that movie up until she does the thing with the keys where you think she's in on it. There's no moment.
Right. Well, not only that, but that movie was about something other than, well, we're going to trick you. It was about.
Well, that's my point. It's like, this is the stupider version of that. It's like they saw what other movies have done better and said, how can we make it for the Friday night 16 to 21 crowd?
And by the way, you set yourself a very high bar. I mean, I would not want to be Richard Shepard when the only thing your movie, the only bullet it's going to fire is, I'm going to trick you 3 times.
With Allison Williams, the trickster from Get Out. Like,
yeah. And that's sort of like, really? At the end, you're like, that was all this was about. That's all it was. And you literally sold your soul and threw every other possible thing you could have said and every other possible thing you could have done was thrown out the window because we're going to try to pull off a fuck.
I don't know. Again, it's weird. Like, it's filmmaking in a way that I don't like, which is like stunt filmmaking. So it feels like, right? It's a gimmick. Like, I'm never going to watch this movie again. Like, is there a reason that anybody would rewatch this movie?
No, because I don't think you end this movie really being on wholly on someone's side. Like,
no.
Yes. The right person triumphs.
No. Again, that's my question with this movie. It's like you have the opportunity to do something interesting with Allison Williams and Logan Browning because they do have the double twist of, well, Allison Williams is trying to save Logan Browning, and then they're in on it together at the end with that double twist. But then they take the movie one scene too far.
Go ahead. Explain.
Right. Steve,
describe what happens.
I don't even want to describe it. So at the end of the movie,
no, you should.
At the end of the movie, Allison Williams is about to be gang raped, and Logan Browning is going to fuck her with her hand stump, which is a sentence that is a new sentence for me to utter out loud. And then the two kind of creepy, also gang rapists die. You find out that Logan Browning and Allison Williams are in on it together. They poisoned them. They kill the other female in the movie who's also in on it. And then they get into a prolonged fist fight with Steven Weber. Oh my God. And Allison Williams gets lobster armed, which is what I called that since I saw it in Saw 6 or 7. That was also in Men earlier this year, that same thing where you get stabbed through the arm and then essentially pulled all the way up, splitting your arm in half. And so then at the end of the movie, Steven Weber is on a couch, no arms, no legs, eyes sewn shut, mouth sewn shut. His ears are the only thing exposed, and Allison Williams and Logan Browning are on stage playing the cello, one of them plucking the strings, the other one playing the bow, because neither one of them have a complete set of arms, but together they do, Richard.
You see?
Boo! It's such a boo-worthy moment at the end of the movie. It's a Tales from the Crypt episode. It's a Tales from the Crypt episode.
No, Chris, yes. You don't get it. It's a feminist statement against the patriarchy. God, you just don't get it. You don't get it.
That's what it is. Ugh. They really thought they were onto something with this ending, didn't they?
Now, having said that, when you just described the event, it sounds like the most insane movie anyone's ever seen, right? I mean, this is like
fucking. I mean, Jesus Christ.
This is beyond. I mean, beyond any Todd Browning, beyond anything you've ever seen, right? It looked like shit. It looked like a Netflix movie, which is, at this point, probably the biggest insult I could give something, because they all look the same. And have you noticed this?
They do. It's
That-
fucking strange, man.
There's
I don't get
something
it.
going on with the Netflix movies. They look like they've all been put through a computer. There's no style. They're all sort of like, well, here's how much action. Here's how much of this we need.
You're just talking about Netflix movies. You're not even talking about horror movies.
The
You're
ones
just talking
that
about
I'm
Netflix
talking
movies
about
in general.
any Netflix movie looks like, again, it's a dish prepared from a recipe by a robot that's never tasted. That is a Netflix movie. Guess I'm not working for Netflix anytime soon.
Hey, ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. I mean, it's okay. There's enough streaming platforms now where you have the pick of the litter, like HBO Max. So there you go. You know what I mean?
There you go.
But but I think there is something to that, because I spent part of my day today watching a Netflix movie called Blood Red Sky. It is a
what's that?
It is a you'll appreciate this. It's Die Hard on an airplane with vampires.
Why didn't I?
Because you thought of Die Hard on a train.
Well,
before anybody else had done Die Hard on a train. Richard, you made the only movie that needs to exist for there to ever be Die Hard on a train. You made the Die Hard on a train. I don't know anybody else who made the definitive on a anything movie, and then there needs to be no others. But yeah, Die Hard on a plane with vampires.
I mean, there should be, if Netflix is going to make movies, they should feel different, and they should feel like we are, like, what you want ideally is for Netflix to go, you're a cool, we like you. You know what? Here's your money. Go make your thing. Like, in a way, I would almost say that, like, the Netflix documentaries are more successful in sort of being their own thing. Like they don't all feel the same.
No.
They're not all great, but a lot of them are great.
Yeah.
And these films, for some reason, it's sort of like, why does this feel like, I don't know, like, we're going to film a little bit in a foreign country. We're going to do this other thing. Like I know.
Yeah, the China, that's intentional, right?
No.
2018 was the height of filming in China for no reason, if I remember correctly. Wasn't that around the time when that Avengers movie came out that was just randomly set in like Singapore or Hong Kong? Do you remember that?
Oh, God.
Or maybe there was a time where these Chinese actors were just showing up in American movies. It was like, it's so we can release the movie in China.
Which, I mean, and again, by the way, you can benefit from that because it's like, oh, suddenly you're seeing great actors uniform. It's like, it's hard to blame the individuals. And I don't.
No, I don't. I blame the industry as a whole.
Don't blame the cast of the movie. I do blame Richard Shepard, and I definitely blame Netflix. Because there simply is no answer to the question, why? Why would you do this? Why would this movie exist? Why would you do this? Like, for an actor, you got to work. And you don't know. The movie might turn out great. It's like, maybe this will be this year's Sleuth. We don't know, But an actor, these are not actors who, well, I mean, Stephen Weber's whatever he does. Stephen Weber did a good job. Everyone did a good job. To what end? To what end?
Well, that's what
have we learned about the human condition by watching?
Don't necessarily have to learn anything. The problem is, I think the movie wants you to. What? I'm not sure what you've learned, Richard. You tell me.
I've learned. I wasted an hour and a half of my life.
But is this any different than I Spit on Your Grave?
I haven't seen that, so I don't know.
It's a rape revenge fantasy, like those, like Last House on the Left.
Yeah.
To play devil's advocate, like these, like never are these kinds of movies in this subgenre of horror particularly pleasant movies to swallow.
And extremities. And you can name, there's a handful of movies, but when you're dealing, I mean, I'm sorry. Look, when you're dealing with stuff like this, you fucking better have a good reason. And you better think about what it is you're doing. Otherwise, you are going to come off like you're exploiting it. And that's what this felt.
Or insensitive.
We're not the first person to bring this up. I'm sure there were conversations. I don't know what the end of those conversations were, but what we now have is a movie that you either enjoy because you, the viewer, are completely separated from what's happening in the movie and are only reacting to it because it's like, oh man, there were some twists. Just when you thought you knew what was going on, this other thing happened. But to use like what I'm sure has happened, an actual thing, people being sexually abused in a male-dominated dynamic.
Miramax?
Yeah, exactly. We're just gonna sort of use that as a thing. I'll give you an example. When we're working on shows that I've worked on, there's a lot of conversations about a storyline will be, at play. And then someone will suggest, oh, I know. And typically this is exactly the sentence that gets said. She actually gets killed. And now the gloves are off, and he will not stop until that bad guy is brought down. And for the past, 5-6 years, there's been a lot of talk about that. There's like, what are we doing when we're using the death of a female character merely as a formal element to motivate a male character to violence? Is that a thing you want to do? What are we really doing when we do that? And then we have a conversation. And typically what ends up happening is we don't do it because there is a voice in the room. I mean, obviously coming first from the women in the room saying, this has been a trope. This is a trope in filming. They raped my woman. They murdered my woman. Now at first blush, a man will think, well, yeah, he's defending his rape is wrong. Hurting a woman is wrong. Now the man's going to go do something. But often the female or feminist voice in the room is, why is this character's life being sacrificed simply to motivate a man to do more violence? That's not really feminine. No. And in a weird way, it's sort of it's like that character only existed to provide fuel for this dude to go do his evil, his vengeance, And is that all we want that character to do, or do we want that character to do other things? And it's a question. I'm guessing that there were a lot of people at the end of this going, no, but don't you get it? They triumph at the end. But the journey, my God, I don't think no one's watching this going, wow, this is a feminist manifesto.
I don't know what happened to Steven Weber at the end of the movie is pretty feminist, Richard.
Right, because then they have now, I don't know, physically, spiritually raped him.
I guess.
Here's my question. Was it necessary for Logan to cut her arm off for all those events, for justice to be brought to Steven Weber? Was that necessary, or was that the only way? Allison Williams' character.
That's the question. Is Allison Williams unhinged in the movie or not? That's the question. Because is she a stable mind? Because an unstable mind thinks, in reality, if this were real.
Well, no. In the reality of the movie, in the moment that it happened, she manipulated Logan Browning into cutting her own hand off. Right?
Correct. Okay. Because her hypothesis was, there is no other way for me to get through to you, which is like, she didn't even try.
Yeah. No,
there's no way for me to get through to you. I'm not even going to try, though. I'm not going to try to get through.
I have to lie to you and poison you to get you to mutilate yourself to understand the benevolence of what I'm really trying to do for you.
Yeah. And I hope you love me at the end of all of this.
It's all, yeah.
It'll
make sense to you later.
Well, and what I don't understand is
then there's the scene where Allison Williams is at her house cutting tomatoes with a knife. Oh my gosh, they keep showing her cutting these tomatoes. I'm terrified. Someone in the house? Is someone there? And then Logan Browning is there with a taser, 100% committed to what she's doing. But we have to assume that there was a conversation later where it was explained to her, well, I hadn't. And Logan went, I get it. No, I get it.
Well, she told her that after she cut her hand off. She was like, after she cut her hand off, she told her, I had to do this. And then she had to go and find out for herself that Steven Weber is terrible, even though she had been gang raped by him and his cronies for however long. They don't even say it's years.
But wait a second. But then still came back and hunted down Allison Williams and kicked her and tased her. So
for whatever reason,
that emotion is still in operation.
That was for us, the audience.
Then and after that, in a scene we did not see, Allison Williams had to explain, okay, here's what really is going on. And now here's our plan. Are you in? Now let's you and I be psychopaths, because let me predict the next 9 things that will happen in the movie that will crystallize in a moment that will shock the audience, but also allow us to have our revenge. But most importantly, surprise the audience that's watching us, apparently.
It's kind of meta, isn't it?
There are no human beings in this film.
No.
There's not a single human being.
Walking, talking plot points.
That's what they are.
I mean, I've never seen a movie that says, "I hope your cunt can handle it."
No,
Can you imagine writing that line, Richard?
I mean,
but
then you've got to construct the reality in your mind. Like, it's like, wait a second. So wait, this only makes sense if all of that was this sort of, it's like this is all foreplay for, and the thing that is the literal physical thing that is happening is something that they both consent to and are on some level enjoying. This is not upsetting to either one of them.
No,
they're just because they've got the last laugh. We're doing this, but those guys are going to die, but we're doing it anyway because we're enjoying it anyway. Like, we would do this if we took a vacation to Palm Springs. We'd be doing the same sexual act.
Which is what I don't get. Like, are we supposed to sympathize with them at the end of the movie? Like,
I think so. There's no other. And again, if we're just like, okay, so this is a diagram that we're following, and at the end, look, the movie is not asking us to react to anything other than plot.
Nope, that's right.
So what we're reacting to is they had their revenge and now they are together doing their thing. So they are metaphorically and real, physically in reality damaged by their experience, but they have in some way triumphed over their abuser, and they also now still have whatever benefit they would have had experience, which is musical virtuosity. But, not a lot of time is spent reflecting on or artistic passion or how that works in a person or what it means to a person or what just playing music or practicing any art means to a human being outside of performance or fame or monetary reward. Zero time is spent reflecting on that. Zero time is spent reflecting on actual human emotions or would it be like to have been in that place being treated in that way? These are clearly damagers. It's very hard for us to sit back and go, now they're okay.
Well, and that's like what I ultimately don't understand about the job the movie is, or I guess the ending that the movie drives at is like, by the end of it, when you watch the final scene with Steven Weber sitting there, I have eyes and a mouth, but I cannot scream. Like, it's just
one of us.
Yeah, it's like, they cut his arms and legs off and sewed his mouth and eyes shut. They
just
still
like
did that.
Freaks.
Yeah, it's like,
what the fuck?
Yeah, they still did that. Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm not gonna get behind these characters. It could have been earned.
Oh my God.
It could have been earned
because again, I mean, if we're totally forensic, it's like they are now. Steven Weber has created two psychopathic murderers.
He wins
torturers,
in the end.
mutilators. In a weird way, it's like, well, what happens tomorrow? And what happens in a year, 5 years? They're okay now. They're not, or are they still so fucking damaged from the hideous, sexual, physical abuse, mental abuse they went through that they'll never be okay? Give me something.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's weird. It feels like it trivializes the horrible act of sexual assault and this is the high move. This is 2018. Yeah. Like, what this almost feels like in direct response to the Me Too movement. Like, let's give the people what they want. Like, oh, look at all these abusers, Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein, and they're all terrible. Like, I'm not sure that this is the story that you write to address the ill will felt by turning the women into abusers themselves. Like, what message are you sending?
But I mean, I would even say that if and there have been other movies that have done this, but if a movie is about a person who's been abused, who then hunts down their abuser and subjects them to unspeakable torture. That's horrible. And it's an ugly story, but it's just, you're like, okay, I understand the emotion behind it, whether you're arguing pro or con is part of that. But for a movie to simply go, the purpose for the existence of this movie is to see if we can pull off a couple of twists. It's like leave that to Now You See.
Hey, it's fair.
I'll go watch a bunch of magicians because they're magicians. So all the movie is ever going to be about is your ability to pull off a trick. And so I don't expect more from Now You See It or Now You See It Too, which frankly should have been entitled Now You Don't.
Or Ocean's 11. I mean, it's that same thing where it's like the whole point is but that's where that came from. And that's the good kind of tricking of the audience, though.
But not only that, but I mean, it's fucking 2018. Okay, now it's 2022, but you're 2018. We're 100 years into film. You know, it's like take a shambling step forward. I will take a fucked up movie that is actually attempting a particular thing that is sincere and has to do with human emotion. I will cut that a different kind of slack than a movie that is trading on actual human suffering that is not only real and has been real forever, but is now raised to the level of political discourse.
To the point where the company making the movie.
I mean, the irony is hideous. But then to go, we're now only going to use these as tropes and weird, handkerchiefs to wave in the air while we pull off a narrative. I don't think that's a good use of the time and talent of a lot of really obviously talented people. Obviously talented. And by the way, this is more or less the way people felt about Bob Fosse, Star 80. And it's no one is saying that Bob Fosse is not a transcendent artist. What hurts people about Star 80, but you have not seen it.
I have not seen it. I'm not sure I want to.
Have you seen All That Jazz?
Yeah.
Have you seen Cabaret? Okay, you should. Here's a guy who was a piece of shit in real life who made some transcendent art, but his last movie was this weird sort of like, why would you tell this story? And it brings up, it's like now I got to talk about Dahmer, which is the most popular thing that's ever happened. And I'm sitting here going,
have you watched it?
I haven't.
Don't. I mean, like, unless you really want to, but like,
look,
it's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the TV show. I watched 4 episodes and I was like, I can't do it anymore.
How many episodes is it in total?
10 hours of Jeffrey Dahmer eating penis and being terrible. And guess what? You already know that. I've known that since 1991 or 1992.
And look, I've got nothing against Silence of the Lambs, one of the greatest films ever.
Perfect movie, period.
Filled with humanity, filled with ideas. To make a mini series about Dahmer. And look, I've been a 17-year-old male in America in the 90s. When I was fascinated with serial killers. I was a 17-year-old white guy. So that's pretty much
they all look just like you.
Yeah. And it's like, whoa, what's going on with these serial killers? But then, you know what? Then I turned 23 or whatever. And then I got into a relation. And then it was like, you know what? Actually, these people are fucking garbage. And they're not interesting. Because being an incel isn't interesting. And being a guy hurting women, there's no story behind it. There really isn't. It's like, because A, he was, B, he didn't get what he thought he deserved as a white dude in America. Aren't we at a point now in our lives in this country where we're done making excuses for these fucking dudes? And aren't we at a point where we can go, you know what? It's actually not that. It's actually the most common, boring, ugly, stupid, worst part of our culture. We're done.
It's better to mythologize their childhoods, okay? And mythologize their upbringing. That's what I don't understand. Like,
what are they going to do now? Columbine. Let's do 20 hours.
Oh boy, Richard, don't you dare put that out into the world. Chris, it's already happening.
Fascinated by what makes white men angry? Shouldn't we really be thinking about crazy white men more? We're done. We're done with the crazy white, and their time is ending. Yeah. And I'm, aside from how I am now.
Aside from resident angry white man, Richard Hatem. And I quote, Your Honor, angry white man, present Richard Hatem. I agree with you. I think it's lazy and it's tired, and this movie honestly feels like, and I'm going to take this straight from Father Malone, but makes sense given that him and I spent 50 plus hours together talking about it. Honestly feels like a shitty version of the Tales from the Crypt. That's what it feels like. Does it not though? Does it not? Is this
Yeah,
ending?
yeah,
This ending is
yeah.
straight out of Tales from the to the
Well,
point where there are
I hadn't
endings in
thought of
Tales
that,
from the
but
Crypt. There are endings in Tales from the Crypt similar to what we get here, where there's one character being put through immense amounts of torture at the end of an episode, where they're left in a state where you're like, oh boy, like have fun.
Look, and look, this is not a singular.
No.
And Dahmer is just an example of that. It's the biggest hit. So get ready. Going to be more. We're going to get more Dahmer. There is no way that the makers of Dahmer aren't like, oh, well,
he's already done it. It's Ryan Murphy.
Yeah, it's like great.
He's already done it. He already did the
more.
And what I don't understand is that Versace show came out, and I thought it kind of pushed the envelope a little further than maybe we should be with serial killers and their portrayal. And then like this comes out, and it's like, what in the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Why does anybody care about Jeffrey Dahmer in 2022? Why?
I read Helter Skelter, and there was a lot from the purview of a white male in the 90s. I looked at Helter Skelter like, ooh, this is really interesting. Like, how do these people? How do we create these people? How are these people? What do we do about these people? And what do we do? And I never questioned the sort of industry behind let's do a lot of this stuff. And it's funny because Silence of the Lambs, then because of Silence of the Lambs, we have every show on television,
7.
We're getting into them, but it's also just sort of like the fascination of we're going to get into the mind of the killer. And I get it. Like that's
anti-heroes.
Part of detective crime fiction. That is a part of that. But my God, it's challenging to watch. Stuff like that is challenging to watch unless it really stakes its claim. And it's so funny. You go back to Silence of the Lambs, and it's like there's so many scenes. And by the way, the great part is it's not overt, but there's so many scenes about misogyny and sexism, and it's
told
not even
visually,
the
told visually,
brilliant. And it's not even the point of it. Like no one walks out of that movie going, I think I got an insight into what it's like being a woman in America,
or in the FBI, more specific, in a male-led profession.
Yes, in a male-led profession. No one walked out of the theater going, well, that's.
But on further viewings, that's exactly what it is. When you see those camera shots from Jodie Foster's point of view,
and it stands up. It totally stands.
Oh, it totally does.
Better. Yeah. It's like,
go listen to Mark Begley. Speaking of Silence of the Lambs, Mark Begley, Mike White, and I did an episode on Wake Up Heavy all about Silence of the Lambs like 2 months ago. It's a perfect movie. It's a perfect movie.
Culturecast, Projection Booth.
Wake Up Heavy.
What is Wake
Up
Heavy?
It's a horror movie podcast that I don't. Mark Begley does it. But here's the thing. Mark Begley programmed this month.
Okay. So Wake Up Heavy?
Yep. But we talked about Silence of the Lambs for, I think, 2 hours. No, it's unfortunate because anymore, I think we had a time where it was all about fictionalizing the stories and not telling the stories, one for one. You could read the true crime and rule books, and then you could go and watch the movie about it or the TV movie. But then the movie would be adaptation or something to that effect, or a retelling like Silence of the Lambs. There's a lot of Ed Gein in there. There is Dahmer, obviously, with the whole cannibalism thing, but obviously Silence of the Lambs was written before Jeffrey Dahmer was even known to the public. So I liked it more when the things were inspired by. Have you ever seen the Poughkeepsie tapes?
No, what's that?
That's a fucking rough watch. It's a mockumentary true crime film about a serial killer whose box of like 800 tapes were found in his house in Poughkeepsie. But it's presented as real, but it is fake. But for the most part, really convincingly done. And it's not trying to like trick the audience into being real, but it's trying to ape those true crime documentaries that you would see in the 90s and early 2000s. But
how is it?
It is fucking brutal. But it's
brutal, like, is it fun to watch or is it?
No. It's awful to watch. I mean, it takes.
So it's not a comedy.
No, you're right.
I literally thought it was like The Onion or something. Like you were saying, it's like a satire of these true crime.
No, like taking this and saying like, okay, instead of covering the real things, let's make something so abhorrent that like it stands on its own. And the serial killer in the Poughkeepsie tapes is just like, take everything terrible about the worst serial killers, roll them into a ball, and that's that. character in that movie, but it works in that regard because character, you're only ever seeing him through footage that he filmed or like surveillance camera of him. You're never seeing like his childhood or anything. And that I think is the best way to handle stuff like that. It's like, I don't want to know. It's not that I don't want to know about their childhoods, but don't mythologize real life serial killers. Don't mythologize them. They're not heroes. They fucking killed an ape. And when you give Gacy and Dahmer backstories, you're mythologizing. That's the only, and like, I have no I mean, I get why they do it to make him more sympathetic or whatever, but like, don't mythologize them because the wrong people are going to get the wrong idea and they already have, and they continue to.
Well, and it's weird because it's like, obviously, you know, everyone knows Dahmer is bad. Okay. Got that. Now we're making a movie about him, and the tacit point of view of the filmmakers is, well, we have to figure guys like this out.
No, we don't.
Right? Well, don't we? I mean,
no, we don't. I mean, that's the question, right?
But do we need to know why? But don't we need to understand why incels are incels? Your argument, I kind of agree with, is no. Like, I don't really care why you're a Nazi. I don't really. And it's like, well, but don't we need to understand the Trump voter? It's like only the way we need to understand the COVID virus, so that we can get rid of it. It's like when something is destroying something, you only need to understand it enough to protect yourself against it and make sure it does not kill everything. And so I'm not super curious about a Hitler biography because in a weird way, again, by doing it, it sends the message that it is unique. And it isn't. White male violence against women and people of color is the most... And gays is the most common thing in the world. It's not unique. It's not aberrant.
It takes only many forms too.
But it's only aberrant in degree. But dial down the degree and it's like, well, it's now just casual dismissal or worse, rejection of people who are not what the most powerful person, the society, who for some reason has taken on a victim mentality. Hi, I'm a white man who has somehow decided that because of my individual deficiencies, it's got to be a war against white. Well, maybe you're just not that great. Because I got to tell you, if you're a white man in America and you got a problem getting a job, race ain't your problem.
Well, but I mean, I think that's the ultimate issue with something like The Perfection or something like Dahmer. It's just like, I get why we keep telling these stories, but there are better ways to tell them in ways that don't feel so worn out. Like this is like the Perfection is a worn out story that they're telling. And they think that, you can put it in a prep school for girls who are playing cello. And all of a sudden you're going to change it and make it into something else. No, it's still a very lazily done rape revenge story. And there are good rape revenge stories. There are good, like, fucking Straw Dogs, for fuck's sake. Give me
2 hours of two women being actual human beings with history and depth, feelings, and three-dimensional lives who have gone through an experience and through just human evolution in a relationship realize that they have been victimized and maybe there is something they can do about it, and then they do something about it. I'll watch that. I'll watch that. Is this something that young women are supposed to watch and go, wow, I feel strong. I'm walking out of the theater or out of my living room having watched The Perfection feeling like I'm stronger now and I'm gonna approach my life different now.
I don't know. I don't think so.
It's hard. It's hard for me to make that argument. And I don't know. I mean, if there's another voice out there, I mean, there's a Twitter feed. Let me know if you're a woman who watched this and went, yes, this makes me feel like I can stand on my own 2 feet and make a change in my life. Then let me know. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm watching it as a straight white man and I'm not getting it, but maybe that's my problem.
Well, and the other thing about this movie is we are in the wrong. This movie is rather well received.
Is it? Because it got like a 6.2 on
71 on
IMDb.
Rotten Tomatoes out of 100 reviews, which would mean it's certified fresh. And some of the reviews were rather glowing about how novel the movie was. I mean, it's just like, am I fucking going crazy here?
I'm look,
Is it a case of you don't watch
out...
enough thriller and horror movies and you haven't seen these tropes enough? Is that what this is? Is that what this is? And that's why, I mean, but it could it be? Ask yourself, could it be? If you have not seen enough of these movies, yes. Could that be it? Could this be it feels novel because I haven't seen enough of these movies?
Yes.
Did we just sound like, are we the movie snobs here? I mean, we are, but at the same time, like, I want more from my movies that are these kinds of movies. Because this is the kind of shit De Palma would make. This is a thriller. This shouldn't be a horror movie. It doesn't need to be a horror movie. The fact that it is a horror movie actually detracts from what the message could have been, frankly.
I don't have zero confidence in the culture of film criticism in America and the world in the year 2022. One of the reasons is I don't think they have a lot to bite down on. I don't think that the world of film is particularly interesting. And so I don't know that these people are involved in a dynamic art form right now. It ain't the 70s. There's no, we're not living in a time where movies are worth
the price of admission.
About. They're just, frankly, not a lot of them are worth talking about. And it's, from the point of view of an artist or a developing artist, you know, my feeling was always, look, I mean, just my physical life as a human being on the planet. I grew up and I was in high school in the 80s. I went to high school from 80 to 84. So every movie from 80 to 84, I saw on the easily. I mean, there's not a movie I didn't see. And then maybe for, another 3-4 years after that through college. And then that was also the rise of cable. So I was seeing everything in the 70s. So when I was in high school, people absolutely knew about Apocalypse Now and The Godfather. They knew about Coppola, Scorsese, and Bob Fosse and everything else because it was on cable. And it was like, we were living in a world where it's like, you watch anything. It's like, my God, let's go watch a movie tonight. I don't care what it is. Let's go to a movie. Then let's come home and watch a movie on cable. And let's just consume movies. And they were being made for different reasons. And the culture was different. So then to dial in the lens even tighter, my friends in high school and in college were extremely bright, passionate people about storytelling and film and television. I didn't know that. I just thought they were my friend. In retrospect, I realize now these people were fucking geniuses and they were 17-year-old asshole teenagers. But we would go see movies and then we would argue about them 2 hours. We didn't go see movies and go, that was awesome, there was tits, and then go eat a pizza. We were like, I hated that movie. I loved it. And wow, and then it's on. Because it was of vital importance to figure out why we liked a movie or why we didn't. And the reason it was important is because we were going to be artists. We were going to be people that were going to contribute to this culture. And so it mattered. And art mattered. And it was never just entertainment. It meant something. And that was the world we grew up in. And that's what we were. Okay? I don't know if that exists. I don't know. I think people maybe argue about movies like I liked it, I didn't like it. And I say this all the time, tell me the Academy Award Best Picture nominee or winner in the last 20 years that is a classic that will be watched for all time. Silence.
The Departed?
Wow.
Return of the King.
Okay, hold on.
Return of the King. Return of the King. But that's the exception that proves the rule. Even I will admit that.
Well, a well-made adaptation of a fantasy. So you might as well be saying Empire Strikes Back. It's fantastic. But The Departed. Okay, now take Scorsese.
I like The Departed. Goodfellas is one of my favorite movies, and I would be willing to contend. But The Departed is a good movie.
But Scorsese, just take the director. Is The Departed in your top 8 Scorsese?
Yes.
Is it in your top 5? That's what we're dealing with.
Might be in my top 5, but it's not my top 3. But to be fair, when the first 2 are Goodfellas, oh my
King
God.
of Comedy.
No.
What?
Jesus Christ, the one with Griffin Dunn.
After Hours?
After Hours. I love that movie.
You're not even talking Taxi Driver. You're not talking
You know what my third movie would be? Casino. Sorry. Casino, Goodfellas, After Hours. Those are my 3.
Okay, so my 3 of Scorsese are King of Comedy.
Okay.
That's it. No, a Goodfellas, King of Comedy, Goodfellas, Taxi.
Goodfellas is still a more important movie for me in my mind than the movie that won the year that won.
Which was?
Gone Dances with Wolves.
I know, isn't that strange? And I have not revisited Dances with Wolves.
Nobody
I liked
has.
it when I saw
Nobody has. They're not writing books about the making of that movie, but they wrote it about Goodfellas. And I think to your point, look, I agree. Actually, I think using award winners is kind of in and of itself a tad archaic, because I think nobody cares about the academies anymore more than the Academy, and that's about it. I mean, don't ask Mike White or I, like, really the Academy Awards are bullshit. But I think to your point, it's a different point that you're essentially making, which is, in the last 20 years, have there really been any classic movies released? And yeah, kind of, but not in the way that, like, not in the way that they feel important or like memorable or earth-shattering or groundbreaking. Like,
when I talk to the people who I work with who are in their 20s or even early 30s, so I'm going to give the culture to them. There is not a handful of movies that they point to and say, these are the ones. These are the ones that define my generation. These are the ones. Like, there will be people who like, oh, I really like this one. Oh, I really like that one. And often they are genre movies, which is fine. I think genre movies can be transcendent, obviously. But it's not like, if you talk to any 31-year-old, they're going to say 500 Days of Summer changed their life. And it's just, whether I like it or not, that's the movie. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is the one that changed a generation. There isn't even a movie I disagree with. There's just no movie. It's just, I thought that was cool. I didn't like that one. Nothing seems to rise up. Like, now that we've gone through the last 20 years, Juno is the movie that everyone, it's like, nope.
It's like there's a bunch of false starts is what it feels like, right? Like fake pretenders to the crown.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we did get the no, And look, and a lot of it.
I mean, I can tell you movies that are important for me specifically, but like
tell me. But in the last 20 years, just tell me like yours are, just so I know.
Okay, so
I won't shit on them. I swear to God.
I don't care if you shit on them. It doesn't matter to me. What the fuck do I care?
If you like the movies,
just because I like something doesn't mean I can't like understand someone else taking the piss out. That's the problem with being a fan. You have to be able to take criticism if you're a fan of the things that you like. You're not allowed to just sit and say, well, you can't criticize things that I like.
I know, but it's so hard for people of my generation. It's very hard. I know.
It's the same generation that pushed for Egon to be in Ghostbusters when we could have just gone to a new story. I get it. I don't want to get hung up on shit. You want to get hung up on shit I know, but
when you're talking Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Yeah. But like, who cares? Who cares? You know what I mean?
I will never plant my flag on that movie.
I know, but there are plenty of people of your generation that will, because it's what they wanted. And that's my thing. It's like, to be a fan of something, you have to be able to take the good with the bad, and you can't just love all the good stuff and pretend that the bad stuff doesn't exist. And that's the problem with the last 20 years.
It feels like, think about yes, but there's when you're young, movies change. When you're in your teens and your 20s, movies change your life.
Agreed.
Okay, so what? So
but the movies that changed my life were from the 80s, like Fletch.
Okay, but tell me,
Fletch.
Okay, tell me, Fletch. Okay,
Fletch. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Got it.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Got it. Okay. Well, take those three. You don't have to go further.
Mallrats. And Dogma by a bigger extension, I think.
Okay, so here's what I'm saying. Here's 100% believe and even support that those movies changed your life. But you certainly, I mean, I have no doubt to agree that if I took 100 people your age, your exact age, and had them write down 5 movies that changed their life, those might not be the same 5 movies.
No, but I do a movie podcast.
Right. And
I guarantee you I could pick the movies that people would say, probably a Star Wars movie, probably an Indiana Jones movie, or a Lord of the Rings movie. Like, though, it's easy. Okay. Like, people my age are fueled by adaptations of things and Star Wars. You know what I mean?
So people my exact age, I'm 55, I'll be 56. You're going to hear Harold and Maude.
Yep.
And you're going to hear it in a way, people say that they love Harold and Maude, and they get a look in their eye that says, don't argue with me right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And when people who are in their 50s or even older, but not too many younger, talk about a movie, for instance, Harold and Maude, it's like, this is not something we're going to debate.
Right.
This is received with. This movie is about human beings in a way that I've never seen a movie be about human beings. And it's sacrosanct to the degree that there are people that I care about so deeply who are younger than me, who I'm like, I want to tell them to watch Harold and Maude, but I'm afraid they're not capable of watching it in the correct way. Now, this is bullshit. That's a bullshit way to come on. You should be able to watch a movie, and any human being should be able to watch a movie and go, it was good, it was bad, I liked it.
I agree.
But when you talk to people of my generation and you ask them to name the top 5 movies, 3 of them are going to be the same movie. You know, people are going to say Chinatown. People are going to say Godfather. People are going to say Raging Bull or Cabaret or all that jazz. Right? You know, I mean, there's a handful of movies. Now, were there fewer movies being made? No, there were more. And yet there were certain ones that were made that were speaking to us in a more direct way. Now flip it, TV shows, it'll be different. It'll be the same ones. You talk to people of any age right now and say, name your top 5 TV shows, and more than likely Breaking Bad's going to be in the top 5. It just is.
Wouldn't even be anywhere in near mine because I've never watched it and have no interest in watching it.
Well, I know, because people like you and I suffer because it's like, yeah, I swear, it's like I'm the person who says, if one more person tells me this movie is great, I will never watch it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Look, it took me forever to watch The Sopranos. So,
and how far in are you?
I'm done. I've watched it like 2 or 3 times all the way through in the last year and a half.
And do you like it? So you loved it,
Richard? I pitched the idea of you and I doing a Sopranos podcast together because I want you to watch it, and that's going to be the only way I can do it is by fucking forcing, dragging you, opening your eyes like Alex DeLarge. Watch the show, Richard. It's 8 fucking seasons, man, but it's only like 8 episodes a season.
How many episodes did it take before you were hooked?
Dude, it's Goodfellas, the TV show. I was already fucking on board. You've seen Goodfellas, right? Tonally, Sopranos is essentially the same.
Okay. All right.
Like, and if Goodfellas is your favorite movie, like it is for me, it's a layup. It's a slam dunk. It's like it's like an 8-foot basket or 8-foot basket, 8-foot ladder. You just drop the ball.
And you know that I love David Chase for his work in The Night Stalker and The Rockford Files. So if I like those, will I like them?
I've never seen either. I don't know what he brought to those.
You've seen The Night Stalker. You've seen.
I know, but those Night Stalkers are not indicative of his career. That was the first writer's room he was ever in. That was the first writer's room he led, I believe. The Sopranos is the show that all the other shows attempt to be. Okay. And even the best of them, like Breaking Bad, are still, in a way, poor facsimiles of the greatest show ever.
Okay, so you're saying that up until very recently, you did not watch The Sopranos.
Nope.
Not going to watch it. Then you started and you were like,
I got it. I understood exactly. Like, it's the performance of James Gandolfini alone is a masterclass. And then you add everything else into it. And then you add David Chase operating at what we consider to be peak operating power as David Chase. I mean, there's a reason that he has done very little else since. I do not blame I don't blame the guy. Like,
this was his
Mr. Magnum Opus. Like, and you know what? It's a deeply personal project for him too. That's the other thing. So
but I do love the brought back from Rock in terms of like actors. Like he brought George Loros back and stuff. God, I guess we're not really talking about The Perfection anymore, are we? Good.
It's not a great movie.
I think, listen,
it's not perfect.
I think we should end this. You were very positive about The Sopranos. Is there something new that you're really into right now? There's a TV show that I've watched very recently that I just thought, oh, this is delightful. And I would like to end on a positive note to say to viewers, well, if we're clearly not recommending The Perfection, why not watch this? Well,
let me ask you, do you have a horror movie that people should watch other than The Perfection, given that it's October? How's that? It's a horror movie. It's October. Okay. This is the time when people who don't like horror movies watch horror movies. They're deigning us with their presence for 1 month of the year. The rest of us who watch horror movies whenever the fuck we want.
What am I going to say? I'm going to say John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm going to say American Werewolf in London. I'm going to say watch those and have the time of your life. You will be so happy watching these. You will be happy. Is that weird to say that you will watch these movies, you will watch John Carpenter's The Thing and be horrified and happy? You will watch a very gory film called American Werewolf in London, and it will make you happy to be alive and to see an artist do their thing at the best level. That's what I'll say.
So Richard, being a 55-year-old man, is swinging right at the fence for the movies that he saw. He was in his early 20s, or I guess early teens even.
Yeah, I was 16 pretty much.
Good God. Good God.
Maybe
Good for
15.
you. Lucky you. Lucky you, Richard.
Yes, lucky me. God bless me. And you know what? You want to go avant-garde? Check out
Altered States has William Hurt in it, though. Come on, man. He's the world's most disinterested actor.
Oh, have you seen Altered States?
No, but reason I stayed away from it is because I'm not a fan of William Hurt in general. I think his acting stylings are strange. Disinterested,
Agreed.
Right? Disinterested.
Agreed. Can we please, please.
For the love of God, let's wash the taste out of our mouth.
Chris, I am begging you, let me do a podcast with you about Altered States and Taps. Please, for my birthday, will you just give me this, please?
For my birthday? Wow, look at that. Richard's about to start crying, ladies and gentlemen. This is a
My birthday is on November 2nd, Dia de los Muertos.
Oh, sure, why not?
Out.
Sure, why not? Let's do it. Why would I say no? Why would I say no?
Name the time, name the date. Let's do these.
Why would I say no, Richard?
I don't know, because you're like Steven Weber. You're a difficult taskmaster.
I don't know
You've
about
never
that.
sexually abused me. Thank God.
God.
Because we've never been within. Well, you did come to LA, so we've been within 100 miles of each other.
It's true. I don't know how close we were that one. God.
But we've never actually seen each other.
No, God. You know what? End on the note, like you mentioned, to end on a positive note.
Yeah,
I'm glad that these movies exist. Like you said, I'm glad that people are getting work. I can't suggest any other Netflix horror movies because I haven't watched enough, but I can tell you that there are better horror movies that you can go out. You know what I watched just recently that I kind of liked, never had seen before? Misery. Never seen it. Oh, it was pretty good. Kathy Bates is really good. What a surprise. James Caan is, in a bed the whole movie. Yeah. What a sweet gig that must have not been, because that must have sucked hard.
The movie has a lot for it. That is one of my favorite Stephen King books. And it's so dark. It's rough. Like, I've recommended it to people who are like, what the fuck, man? I read that book. What's wrong with you? And I'm like, isn't it great? And they're like, you need to fuck right off. That book is like my darling wife, Susan, read that book after I and another friend recommended it. And at the key moment of a big plot twist, which is different in the book. It's not the same in the movie, they soften. And in the movie, it's horrifying. And in the book, it's, you know what it is.
No, I don't.
Okay. So in the movie, she does this thing called hobbling, where she hobbles James Caan, her prisoner, by placing a block of wood in his ankles and then using a sledgehammer to shatter one of his ankles. Now, in the book, she has an axe and she cuts his foot off with an axe. You've never had a moment like you had a moment when you read Stephen King's Misery the summer it came out. It's shattering. That book is radioactive. And it doesn't end there. It goes on.
I'm good. The movie's pretty gnarly in and of itself. Kathy Bates' performance is great. But yeah, the hobbling, I enjoyed it. I'm glad I finally sat down and watched, because Stephen King's adaptations are very hit or miss. So
they really are. And it's funny because there was a point in my life where Stephen King was the most important creative voice in my head by far. And but book-wise, not movie. Like, I was never like, oh, Carrie, The Shining. It was like, no, you got to read these books. Now, at a certain point, then something changed, and I was like, oh, I don't love every single. But they
stopped mattering after a while. They used to be a thing,
because you can only look. I say, when I do like a writing class, I say this all the time. Like, you can take your favorite author and take all of their book, all of them, every single one of them, in a physical copy, and then paint a line down the middle of the room. And on one side, put your favorites, and on the other side, put the others. And that second group will be much larger. And that's your favorite author. So now you got to go, there's no artist in the world that is going to please you and hit your sweet spot every single time. It's just not possible. And that's probably a good thing. And that's just the way it goes. And the weird thing is, it's usually far earlier. I don't know a lot of artists, film direct, novelists, where it's like, I hated their early stuff, but those last 3 books.
Yeah, right. It's not a thing.
It's not.
I don't think. Well, I mean, you could have a late career renaissance, as they would. I don't know. Has Stephen King had that? I mean, again, like we're in the late stages of his career, are we not? Like I don't know.
I don't know. And then that's
people can live forever. There's gonna be people writing as Stephen King once he's gone, right? Like
no, I don't.
That's not one of the. We had the Michael Crichton debate. We had the Michael Crichton debate, and then I literally sent you a picture of a Michael Crichton book written by somebody else with his name on it. Like it's the cachet continues.
That's the estate. Like Robert B. Parker, his estate has allowed people to continue his titles, and some of those I continue with. But I'm like, well, but here's the thing: Stephen King has been writing for 50 years.
I know. Is that fucking insane?
Okay. So now my kids read his early novels, the ones that meant something to me, and they're like, oh, these feel like, they're kind of boring. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
He's like the literary equivalent of The Simpsons, right? Like he's been here. I mean, no, for real. The Simpsons has been around my entire life. It was on in 1990, I believe, in April of that year, maybe even. Yeah. I have never been alive without The Simpsons on. Like Stephen King has been writing almost the entire time you've been alive. He's been writing since I've been alive. Like
there are people discover when you write for 50 years and you're such a force in entertainment that he is still relevant enough through movies and Chapter 2 and all that stuff, that there are people who are like, oh, I've heard King guy. Let me pick up a Stephen King book, and they're picking up, Billy Summers or something else he's written in the last 5 years. They're not
fairy tale
necessarily fairy tale. They're not going back, and going, well, what was he writing in 1970? They're not reading Firestarter, and if they are, they're experiencing it in a very different way than a person reading a novel in 1976 or whenever he wrote that, 77. It's just. Even novels were different.
Comes with a lot of baggage now. Like you can't even read The Dark Tower the way you used to. I read The Dark Tower this year for the first time.
Oh, right. And with the same reaction that I did, though, which was the first one not so great, the second one fantastic.
I haven't read the second one. I've only read the first one.
Oh, I'm getting you confused with my son.
Richard.
Forgive me.
It's okay. It's okay, Dad. It's okay, Pops. I liked it enough.
Dark Tower, okay.
But it was so stylistically fucking weird. And it was it was like Stephen King trying to write like somebody else.
Chris, okay, do me a favor. Because you've read other Stephen you've liked.
I read It this year. It was actually pretty, it was the longest of toothed books, but that's fine.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you 2 things. The first thing I'm going to tell you is read the second Dark Tower novel, The Drawing of the Three.
Okay.
Wherever you liked Dark Tower, you will like.
Okay.
I will bet you my liver. And then the second thing I'll tell you is if you read it and you enjoyed it to any degree, then read The Stand. And you will just have the happiest month of your life.
I read it in a week.
Okay, then you'll have the happiest week.
I have slowed down in my reading.
Have you? How long is it? How long
it is 40 hours if you listen to it, and it's like I want to say 1,300 pages. Yeah, well, of course.
Okay.
Well, I listened and read. I switched between the two, which I think is actually more rewarding than just reading or listening. That's a fucking honker of a novel. Yeah, it's fucking huge. What is it, like 1,400 pages more than that?
I will tell you.
Oh, it's paperback. It's a trade.
It's the little paperback. It's not like a big so it's like the little, like I can carry this in my hand. In this book, the novel itself ends on hold on, The Stand. It ends on page 1,439.
Wow.
And okay, so this is the book that 10 years ago, my 16-year-old son, Spencer, who I just confused you with. We had a contest. It's like, okay, I'm going to reread The Stand. You're going to read The Stand. Whoever finishes first gets $100 from the other person.
I'd have had that shit read in a day, man.
I know he was fucking motivated, but we kept texting each other lines from the book to sort of indicate where we were. But he read it, and it took us almost 3 weeks. He beat me, and I happily paid him, but he loved it. And I loved it. And this is my favorite Stephen. There's a lot of books I love. All of them are within his first 15 years. None or something.
Kind of like the Simpsons in the first 13 seasons.
There's nothing past the dark half that Stephen King has written that I'm like, I truly, truly, deeply love this. But that's okay. That's fine. There's been a lot that I've really, really liked. There's been a lot that I've really not liked. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't. When I was 16, dating my future wife, Melise, my first one, and we would hang out with her dad, Jay, who was a big reader. This was a guy who had a picture being 16 and going to your girlfriend's dad's apartment because, her parents were divorced. And he's living out in the valley. And you walk into this dark, dingy apartment that just reeks with cigarette smoke. The guy, cigarette every second. And literally just books in stacks everywhere. And this is when I was falling in love with books. I'm like, what is going on? And he's like, you want a book? Here's the book you should read. And he'd recommend a book. And I'd read it. It was the greatest book. And then another and another and another. And at one point I was like, oh, I read something by Stephen King, and it wasn't that great. And he said to me, how many great novels does one man have to write?
That's the question. I've asked that about filmmakers and composers. Like, wouldn't you love to be John Williams and just have the Star Wars theme to your name, let alone Indiana Jones, let alone Harry Potter, let alone Superman, let alone Jurassic Park, let alone Jaws, let alone Close Encounters? Like, that's my question. Like Steven Spielberg to have just directed Jaws, let alone Close Encounters, let alone the list that I just mentioned, because half those movies were directed by him anyways. It's that same thing. Like, what does Stephen King have to do? I don't know. You know what? You want to know the first Stephen King novel that I ever read? Cell. When I was 16.
I can't. That is so appalling. And yet, I don't know. Did you like? What was?
I did like it. I liked it up until the ending, and then the ending sucked.
He is a savant. He is a prose savant. It is very difficult not to get caught up in his storytelling. I do believe that he is the modern Dickens. He may literally be a reincarnation of. I mean, it's like who is able to write in such a way that it's like, I don't care how long this is. I want to hear this voice. And that's why you read Stephen King, is for the voice, his obsessive voice.
Dickensian. That's the way to bring this full circle. Do you know who narrated the version of It that I listened to this year? Stephen Weber. Stephen fucking Weber. He is so good too. He is so good. Like, what's funny is great. I hadn't even thought about having spent 40 hours with Stephen Weber this year, but I had, because I listened to it. It was, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was the best book I've read this year, because it's not the best book, but it's pretty good. It's better than the movies, but that's not hard. And anything is better than this movie.
Yeah, this thing is just, I was trying to find the right word to describe to Spencer what I thought The Stand was, and it's lurid. And there's human beings. It's filled with human beings. So I'll give you that.
I wish that The Perfection had been better. I wish that we had more to talk about with it.
Yes.
But Stephen
God
King
bless everyone involved. This gives me no pleasure. I'm not someone who's like, oh yeah, I dump on movies and it's like, no, best compliment I can give The Perfection is that I had a deeply emotional reaction to it that I've tried to express fairly and articulately in the past hour and a half we've been talking.
Just maybe not the emotional response that the directors were expecting.
Maybe not.
It's hard to talk about new movies. It is, especially when, my expectation with the movie is that I'm going to have something to enjoy. And yeah, this one left very little, unfortunately.
I don't believe that anyone embarks on the undertaking of filmmaking or television making with anything other than the best intentions. Agreed. And the highest sort of Because I know the process, and the process is explaining to yourself and others the idea a billion times, and nothing is done thoughtless. So I will say that on no level do I believe that anyone embarked on this endeavor with anything less than the highest bestness. So I will say that.
I agree. I agree with you. And that's the problem when we're talking about movies that we didn't like. I don't want to be overly negative because, again, you work in the industry, and I work in the industry and not the way you do, but I understand how many people were working on this. It's not just 6 people got together and said, let's make a movie. It's not that. It's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, however many people listen to the goddamn credits for the movie. Catering and craft services included.
I have so many good friends that are dear to me, whose shows I don't like. Who cares? They're good people. They're trying.
Exactly.
There's challenges we know nothing about. This is the reality of this entire industry. But the entire industry is predicated on the notion that a thing will be presented and then that thing will be received. And so we're playing our role by receiving it in the way that we as individuals receive it.
And it ultimately comes down to a value proposition. Do you want to spend an hour and a half of your time watching this? Because it's all about your time. Because at this point, it's not about your money. You already have Netflix. You're not paying anything to watch this. You're not going to a theater. This is free if you have Netflix. You could have been watching this right now and costing nothing to do it. But I think that's the other thing about something like this. It's like, I kind of don't feel as bad at ragging because people are going to be able to watch this in perpetuitum now on streaming. So,
well, it's funny you mention that because it's not like Siskel and Ebert. It's not like, well, if I recommend this movie, it means people are leaving their house, getting a babysitter, paying for parking.
Right. The days of that shit are gone, long gone.
Yeah. It's sort of like, well, it's not going to take a giant this movie, but I'm not one of those guys who's like, I'll never get those 90 minutes back. I don't care. I like watching things. That's time well spent. Even if I'm not a fan, it's time well spent because everything I watch refines how I experience everything and forces me to confront various aspects of filmmaking that force me to explain to myself, why is it working? Why is it not? Why do I like it? Why do I not? Can I articulate this? What I don't ever want is to talk to someone who's like, I hated it. Why? I don't know. I hated it. Why? I don't know. It was stupid. Well, I have no interest in their opinion.
Agreed.
I want to hear why. And as an artist and as a cinema expert, we watch movies by bringing a certain element of our personalities to it and then pressing it up against the movie to see what happens.
I would contend that doing a podcast is performance art. Because I have to have to be entertaining, and you have to be on. Especially, that's the problem. Well, yes. But that is inherently now the problem with criticism in general. Is like you said, people just saying bombastic bullshit to say it. That is in a way entertaining to a certain group of people.
Yeah, but that's not what you're doing. That's
not what I'm doing. But there is a large subsect of criticism now that's what that is, and that did not exist when Siskel and Ebert were around.
Yeah, and look,
it's like the tree splits, and you get all these different ideations on what this is supposed to be and how this is supposed to be done.
And to a certain level, I would expect the reviewer to be self-aware enough about their own prejudices or predilections to contextualize their opinions. And I've tried to do that tonight. And that's sort of why we ended up talking about my experiences in high school and college when my creative soul was being, forged in the furnace of whatever was happening in my life then and whatever movies and TV shows I was watching then. So, it's not just a matter of, I was bored. This was stupid. I wish I was out biking. That has nothing to do with that. So anyway, we have talked about it. I think we've explained it. We've talked about a lot of stuff and I'm going to do everyone a favor and shut.
On that note, let's take a break and we'll play a preview for the next probably totally going to be good movie of October.
This is a safe place. I'm agoraphobic. I can't go outside.
I've been slipping, getting into a really dark frame of mind.
So what's the latest on the street?
Your neighbor, she's become a friend.
Her name is Jane Russell.
Do you want to go outside?
You know, I have a shrink of my own. My neighbor Jane, she's been stabbed.
Detective Little, NYPD.
Where's Jane?
Mr. Russell believes that you made a mistake.
You have never met my wife.
Ma'am, you all right?
I know Jane. Jane's been in my house.
I'm Jane Russell.
I'm not crazy.
I know what I saw.
They're all hiding something.
You will not
Never met my mother.
Stop watching our house.
The doctor said that your meds can cause hallucinations.
I'm not hallucinating. I think there's somebody in my house.
Don't go looking into other people's houses. You won't like what you see.
That's right. On the next episode of the Kulturecast for Horrortober, we're going to be talking about The Woman in the Window, a film that was described to me as a movie featuring performances where nobody's acting like a human being, which I don't know. That sounds exciting to me.
Oh boy. Good luck.
Yeah. And guess who I'm going to be joined by on that episode? Mike White.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
so-
I like Mike White. That's going to be a good one.
So until then, Richard, where can people find you? What are you kicking around doing these days?
Working on HBO Max on the show called Titans. Seasons 1, 2, and 3 are available for streaming in their entirety. And season 4 begins in November. So check your local listings and let me know what you think.
Your local listings. You're on the same thing as House of the Dragon. I'll just go on HBO Max and watch your ass. Is it on HBO? It's on HBO Max, right? It's on HBO Max.
It's on HBO
right?
Max. HBO Max will let you know if you go on the interwebs. You know, I've looked. I believe it is the first week of November. But when I look online, they have not.
Do you work on this show?
Announced.
Do you just put your name on things like Richard Hatem?
Yes.
I directed The Godfather. Richard Hatem's The Godfather.
I swear to God, I've worked like.
I swear to God, they know me on the set. If I showed up, they would be like, "Hey, Rich, how you doing?"
They don't tell me. Like, you always hear about people who are like, I didn't know the show was canceled till I read about it in Variety. That's how I feel. I don't know when the show is premiering, but I think it's the first week of November. So check it out.
As for me, you can find all the stuff that I work at weirdingwaymedia.com. That's the media network that, speaking of Mike White and I set up. You can also find Richard's wife's podcast there, 80s TV Ladies, a look at 80s TV shows featuring ladies. You think Richard's well-spoken? You should meet his wife. As for me, cstasher.com is where you could go if you want to. You don't have to. Patreon.com/Kulturecast. That's more important if you want to make a monetary donation to what we do here. If not, I totally get it. Richard, thank you so much for joining me, putting yourself through this. Every day we do this, we get closer to perfection, don't you think?
I think so.
And we'll catch you on the next episode.